Shalom, shalom, shalom. Yasharahla, it's your brother Nehemiah, Nehemiah from Nations and Kings and Priests, NoKaP Cali section. All right, and I want to send a mighty shalom to all the Akim out there on the highways and byways, presenting their bodies as living sacrifices, according to Romans, the 12th chapter and verse 1. I also want to send out another mighty shalom for the Akim out there on the highways and hedges, magnifying the name of the Most High through the Spirit of Yahwahshi as well. All right. Shalom, shalom, shalom. I also want to send out another mighty shalom to all the Akim out there, reverencing their husbands, being submissive, being diligent, and walking in the righteous paths of our foremothers. All right, trying to be a 1 Peter chapter 3 woman, trying to be a Ephesians 5 woman, Salak striving to be a Proverbs 31 woman. All right, and trying to actually be sincere and be diligent into being a righteous woman and a virtuous woman like our righteous foremothers were. Shalom, 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 Akwathia. I also want to send out another mighty shalom to all the mighty Zaquanium of the Marshara Yasharhala and all the Zaquanium of all the congregations in Yasharahla. Shalom, shalom, shalom. All right. Now, with that being said, this class is going to be talking about locks. All right. I don't like saying dreadlocks because dread is a very disturbing word. All right. And there's nothing dreadful about our hair, and there's nothing dreadful about really our nation when we see and we go through the history and see who we truly are. Now, yes, we did get these curses put on us due to our disobedience. But that does not make us a dreadful people. That doesn't make anything about us dreadful. All right. So with that being said, we're going to go into what locks really are, and we should always start with the scriptures first. We shouldn't try to find out what locks mean just going straight to Google or going straight to some source. We're always supposed to go to the scriptures first. All right. So I was having a conversation with a Ak on via Instagram, and he had showed a post telling another Ak to the locks gotta go. Well, he said dreadlocks. So I'm just gonna say dreadlocks for the sake of this class. So he said the dreadlocks gotta go. The Ak had told him, well, I'm not really listening to that because that's a slave master's type of mentality, because the Most High said we should grow our hair. Plus, I'm a Nazarite and you're telling me to cut my locks because it's in heathen custom. So the Ak who told the other Ak that he has to cut his locks sent him a scripture. And it was quoted from Paul, don't want to butcher it, but it said, doth nature know that, I'm butchering it right now, but it's of the essence of, if does not nature teach a man having long hair is shameful unto him, something along those words. All right, so when I seen this, I'm like, I've studied this in the past, and I myself am a Nazarite, and I have locks, and the understanding I have of it is totally different from the understanding that he has of it. All right, so we have to go to the origins in the scriptures first. We don't go to the origins of Google first. That's backwards. It's backwards. We always go to the scriptures first because we have all the answers in the scriptures, and we're going to get the truth when we're going to get when we're going through the scriptures, if we properly study. All right. Now, when we go outside of the scriptures, it should only be to validate what's in the scriptures, which we know it is if we properly studied. All right. So with that being said, most Akim will go on Google and be like, or type in origins of dreadlocks, origins of this, customs of is dreadlock a heathen custom. They'll go into that without even properly studying the scriptures first to see what it is. All right. So Akim would do something like this. All right. They'll type in the origins of dreadlocks, or is dreadlocks a heathen custom? And then they'll come across stuff like this. All right. So this would be the origins of it, right? Let's just see the origins of it. And then you got an Egyptian whole little thing right here. All right. It says young boxers with long dreadlocks depicted on a fresco in Akrotiri, modern Santorini in Greece. Slakia, I said Egyptian. 1600 through 1500 BCE. It says some of the earliest depictions of dreadlocks date back as far as 1600 through 1500 BCE in the Minoan civilization, one of Europe's earliest civilizations, centrated in Crete, now part of Greece. Frescoes discovered on the Aegean island in Thera, modern Santorini, Greece, depict individuals with long braided hair or dreadlocks. All right, now you have to be careful when you're going through Wikipedia because Wikipedia isn't always accurate. Wikipedia things can be updated whenever somebody decides to update it. Anybody can just go on Wikipedia and update something. So you have to be very careful. If you're typing in something and you're getting your information just based off Wikipedia, I don't recommend that, and it's not wise. There's some things that are accurate on Wikipedia, but not all things. All right, so you have to be careful when you're going through stuff like this when you're searching on Wikipedia. All right. And most people should know this because Wikipedia tells us this. All right. So to keep going, it says in ancient Egypt, examples of Egyptians wearing locked hairstyles and wigs have appeared as bas reliefs, statuary, and other artifacts. Mummified remains of Egyptians with locked wigs have also been recovered from archaeological sites. During the Bronze and Iron Age, many peoples in the Near East, Anatolia, Caucasus, East Mediterranean, and North Africa, such as the Sumerians and Elamites and ancient Egyptians, were depicted in art with braided or plaited hair. Those are braids, singles, cornrows, all right, that we know of, that what I'm going to get into, that people get fumble over in these scriptures, and beards. However, braids are not dreadlocks, and it is not always possible to tell from these. You hear that? And it is not always possible to tell from these images which are being depicted. So some people will be like, oh, it's a heathen custom. It's a heathen custom. You see these pictures, but you can't even really tell if they're locks or braids. It is art. You know what I'm saying? So it's best to go off what you're reading than to go off an image. All right. All right. Now it says some of the history of it, right? I'm just going to go in only a little bit of it because I want to get into what this really truly means. It says over half of surviving ancient Greece Corot sculptures from 615 through 485 BC are found wearing dreadlocks. All right. We see. Now you can go through this and read it on your own. I'm gonna go to a different article, right? And then you have this. Most people would be like, oh, what's a heathen custom? Follow not the way of the heathen. Follow not the way of the heathen. Follow not the way of the heathen. Without no proper understanding of what the scriptures and what the words mean, what the root word means, what the prefix means, what the suffix means in the Hebrew, in order to come up with this one word that brings forth a definition that has other definitions for that specific word. Didn't the Most High tell us in Second Timothy, the 2nd chapter, verse 15, to study to show thyself approved, not to type in on Google and run with what you find? He never said that in the scriptures. All right. So most people will see this as well. They'll see, oh, it's a heathen custom. It comes from India, them Hindus. Follow not the way of the heathen. Without being learned in the scriptures first before they make these type of statements. Yahwahshi said, man, for every idle word would be judged. So we got to be careful. That goes for me too doing this class. We have to be careful. All right. So people will see this and be like, see? You see? It's a heathen custom. All right, brother. All right. So it says in 2500 BCE, the exact date and group of people that begot locks is hard to pinpoint. Is hard to pinpoint. Is hard to pinpoint. Is hard to pinpoint. That's why we go in the scriptures first, because we know that the scriptures are the only truth in the world. But Slater notes that they may have lived as far back as 2500 BCE and practice various religions. It wasn't just to one specific people. or their religion. As Dr. Bert Ash, professor of English and American Studies at the University of Richmond, points out in his forthcoming book, Twisted: My Dreadlock Chronicles, the first written evidence is in what is now India's Vedic scriptures, which show the deity Shiva, that's off, wearing the style. The word used, first, before I go on, I just want to say, just because a heathen has locks, does that mean it's a heathen custom? Just because these people, this nation wears locks, does that mean it's a heathen custom? I'm going to leave it right there. All right. And it says the word used in the Vedic scriptures is jata, which means twisted lock of hair. He writes, the style was also found in ancient Egypt. Talking about it again, Egypt again. Anthropologists have discovered mummies with their hair still intact with locks. And in the Old Testament, some interpretations say that Samson is mentioned as having locks, which we gonna get into. And when Delilah cuts them, loses his surpassed strength. Now you can go and you can read this on your own. So I'm just gonna scroll up and you can see where you can get this blog at, right? And it's called History of Dreadlock. If you type in History of Dreadlocks and you try to find Refinery 29, you can go through and read this on your own. All right, but I just wanted to bring this up because to have two different sources of what it's talking about dreadlocks, where it dates back to, so on and so forth. Now, let's dig into the scriptures because that's what we're supposed to always go with first before we start this quoting out, oh, it's a heathen custom. Well, let's find out if it is or not. All right, let's go to the scriptures, man. Let's go to the scriptures. All right, and I'm going to start from the top. This is the book of Numbers, chapter 6 and verse 1. And the Most High spake unto Moshe, saying, speak unto the children of Yasharahla, and say unto them, when either man or woman shall separate themselves to vow a vow. You can find out what vows are and what the statutes of vows are in Numbers, the 30th chapter. When either man or woman shall separate themselves to vow a vow of a Nazarite, to separate themselves unto the Most High. So when you take a vow of a Nazarite, you are consecrated. You are separate. Like how the Most High says in Deuteronomy 7 and 6, we are holy. When you're holy, you're separate, you're consecrated, you're different from the rest. All right. When either man or woman shall separate themselves to vow a vow of a Nazarite, to separate themselves unto the Most High. What does Nazarite mean? What does Nazarite mean? Let's find out. Let's find out. Let's find out. All right. We got to be very careful. The Most High tells us clearly, study the truth thyself approve. All right. When a lot of brothers get into this truth, people get puffed up. People highly believe that their so-called doctrine is what it is. Humble yourself. We all need to humble ourselves. The Most High loves meekness and faith. Thus saith the scripture. Thus saith the Most High. He loves meekness and faith, not puffed up and know-it-all. Humble yourself. Diligently and sincerely seek the scriptures humbly with meekness. All right, now we're gonna go and we're gonna see what Nazarite means. Nazarite. So you got in the so-called modern, which the Syrian or the Aramaic is, you got na, that na right there. Then the second letter is Salakia, za. Then you got ya, then you got ra. So you got nazar. All right, na, za, ya, ra. Nazar. All right, right here it says Nazir, but it's really na, za, ya, ra. Nazar. When you pronounce these last two, it's called a connector at the end. All right, na, za, ya, ra. Na, Nazar. All right. How they do it is Nazir. All right. And it's H5131. Now I'm going to get two different. I have a hard copy Strong's Concordance. All right. And we're going to get it in my hard copy because I've took a picture of it. And then we're going to get it in here. Or in the interlinear in here. All right. So it's H5139. Nazar. Okay. That's the first one. Za, ya, ra. All right. Definition. One, consecrated, as the scriptures have said. Devoted. All right. And the origin of it is or nazir, nazar, from nazar. You hear? Separate, i.e., consecrated. As prince, a Nazarite. Hence, figuratively, from the latter, an unpruned vine. Now, why is it considered a Nazarite can also be considered an unpruned vine? We'll see it in the scriptures as well. Like an unshorn Nazarite. The Most High also clearly lets us know that no razor shall come upon his head, which meaning he's unpruned, which meaning he's not touched, which meaning that he hasn't been tampered with, which meaning he's in his natural state, which meaning he's in his original state, which meaning he hasn't been defiled, hasn't been tampered with. All right. Figuratively, from the latter, an unpruned vine. What does an unpruned vine look like? Because when you're doing husbandry or you're doing garden work, you know you always pruning your garden. You always getting rid of the leaves or the parts that don't need to be there, so it can so other parts that are magnifying can magnify themselves more. When you're pruning, it's a good thing to prune when you're doing husbandry, but in the sake of being a Nazarite, the Most High doesn't want you pruned. The Most High wants you in your natural state. He wants you how he created you. All right. Like an unshorn Nazarite, an unpruned vine, like an unshorn Nazarite, not tampered with, not getting lineups. All right. Let's go to the picture of that. And then I'm going to show you what an unpruned vine looks like. And then you tell me what it looks like when you're looking at it. And you correlate it with the Nazarite or Ak who took a Nazarite vow and look at his locks. And you tell me if they look similar. You can think about that and meditate on that on your own time. Now we got it again. I have a hard copy of the Strong's exhaustive concordance of the Bible. It's about 25 books, probably 30 now since inflation. You know, it's a very thick book, but it's called the Strong's exhaustive concordance of the Bible. It's a blue and white book, like a sky blue and white book. So this is out of the Strong's exhaustive concordance of the Bible. And it's lining up what it said here. So let's go back. It's spelled the same. All right. Nazar, Yara, Nazar. All right. It's spelled the same. And let's correlate it to make sure we're getting a proper understanding. I don't really go to the blue letter like that because the Ak that I learned Hebrew from, he's done extensive things on the blue letter. So we go to outside sources. We go to interlinear books. We go to things that have more of an accurate understanding of what it is. So I'm not going to bring up the blue letter. Sometimes you might see me use it. Majority of the time, you're not going to see me use it. All right. So we go to different sources and we correlate them to make sure we're getting the proper understanding. All right. We got to fear the Lord in all things, not some. All right. So we've seen that it has some type of correlation, right? Na, za, ya, ra, H5139, same number. Let's go back. Let's make sure we on point. H5139, same number, spelled the same, right? Okay. We on point. All right, let's continue. All right. Nazarite, with the designated meaning of separation. You're consecrated. You're holy. A class of people dedicated to Yahweh. Untended vine. Like I said, I'm going to show you what an unpruned or untended vine looks like. Dedicated to Yahweh in the sabbatical year of rest. All right. Nazarite, Nazarites, vine undressed, separated from. All right. So we got that. Now, since we got the understanding of that, let's go with what an unpruned vine looks like. Look at that. Now, this vine obviously is not alive. It's not in it doesn't have its grapes or anything like that. But look what happened when you don't prune it. When you don't keep it straight. All right, when you're not pruning it to where all the vines are separate from each other. So when harvest season does come, you can just go there and you can just pick your grapes. You know, they're juicy. All right, you could just go pick your grapes off. They're not all knotted and twisted up together, you know, growing in different directions and everything like that. All right, this is what an unpruned vine looks like. Tell me what would you have to do to get rid of this? You'd have to actually prune it. You have to cut off parts. You might have to get rid of the whole thing because it's locked in each other. It's locked up. So when a Nazirite when a Nazirite takes that vow, has that covenant between him and the Most High tells him not to put a razor on his head, which means that when we let our hair grow, they become free-form locks. All right. As an unpruned vine, an untended vine, this is all locked up. This is all knotted and twisted around each other. All right. This is what locks look like on a person. It's all knotted up, twisted up, disheveled. All of that. All right. So that's what it looks like. Okay. And that's a depiction. And this is what the Most High is comparing us to. In its natural state, in its natural state. When you see something wild, it's nobody's out there going to prune it. Nobody's out there tending to it. It's in its natural state, like the Most High had instructed us to be in our natural state. So let's go back to the book of Numbers, the 6th chapter. We left off at verse 2. I'm going to read verse 2 again, and then we're going to drop back down and keep going. Speak unto the children of Yasharahla, and say unto them, when either man or woman shall separate themselves to vow a vow of a Nazirite, we know what Nazirite means now, to separate themselves unto the Most High. He shall separate himself from wine and strong drink, and shall drink no vinegar of wine or vinegar of strong drink. Neither shall he drink any liquor of grapes, nor eat moist grapes or dried raisins. Verse 4, all the days of his separation shall he eat nothing that is made of the vine tree, made of the grape tree. If you just read that how it is, you might think it's talking about all trees that are vine. But when you read it in different, when you read it in context and you read it in different translations, you see that it's talking about strictly the grapevine tree. All the days of his separation shall he eat nothing that is made of the vine tree, from the kernels even to the husk. You can't even eat the seeds. You can't even eat the skins. All right. Now, here's the point of what we're getting to, because this class is about the edification of locks. Verse 5, all the days of the vow of his separation, there shall no razor come upon his head until the days be fulfilled, in the which he separated himself unto the Most High. He shall be holy, consecrated, separate, and shall let the locks of the hair of his head grow. All right, meaning long hair. But it's specific about saying what type of hair that it should be going in. And if you just let your hair grow, our hair just grow, we don't do nothing to it. We don't tend to it. We don't do anything like that. We don't comb it. It starts to, you tell me how it's going to turn out. You going to have locks. All right. Now let's go into this word locks. I'm done with that. So let's go into this word locks. And let's get the understanding, all right? Now, there's two different types of definitions of locks. You have one in Numbers, and then you have the one in Judges. All right? You have you have a definition of locks in Numbers, which is a different definition from the word locks in Judges. This is why context is so important when you're doing a class like this before you make a statement about something. All right. So this is the book of Numbers, chapter 5, verse 6, and we're going to get the Strong's or interlinear of what locks in the book of Numbers, verse 5, means. Then we're going to go to Judges and get what locks in that context and what that means in its context in Judges. And we're going to get the proper understanding through the fear of the Most High, called Hallelujah. All right, so let's scroll down to locks. So you got parai, parai. They pronounce it pera or pera, but when you know some basic Hebrew, you know that it's not what this is. You got pa, they got the spelling right, but not this. So it's pa, ra, I, parai, or parai. All right. H6545. Boom. Let's get to it. And let me go to here and we're going to get the proper understanding. All right. So we see parai, 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 or parai. All right. It's masculine noun. All right. Long hair, locks. The origin of it is from para, the hair as disheveled. Disheveled. Let me go ahead and look up disheveled. Disheveled. Let's see what that means, right? Disheveled, of a person's hair, clothes, or appearance. Untidy, disordered, meaning it's all over the place. You don't comb it. You don't do nothing with it. It's just snappy. It's just snappy. Let's see some similar words that are very similar to disheveled. Untidy, unkempt, scruffy, messy, in a mess, disordered, disarranged, rumbled, bedraggled, uncombed, ungroomed. Now don't comb your hair for 8 months to a year and tell me if you don't got locks or ones that are forming. Tousled, tangled, tangly, knotted, knotty, matted. These are all different words for locks, bro. Shaggy, straggly, windswept, windblown, wild in its natural form, wild, slovenly, slatternly, blousy, frowsy, ratty, mussed up, draggle-tailed. All right. This is what disheveled means. So when you go back and it says it's from the origin para. So you have a root word. In the origin of it, it's talking about the root word. In order for you to know in the Hebrew what the meaning is, you have to know the root word, where it is rooted from. Then you have the prefix and suffix to bring this whole word together to give you the proper understanding of what this word means. Study to show thyself approved, not look up something via something and get your understanding from there. That's foolishness. Foolishness. So it says the origin of it. This is the root word from para, the hair, as disheveled. Disheveled. And we've seen all the similar words to what disheveled is, man. And it's all pointing toward actual locks. All right. And let's keep getting into it. So this is the origin of it, of what it says. Let's just go back and say origin from para. H6544, that first one right there at the top. Para. How is it spelled? You see it? Pa-ra-I. Parai. And pera, the one we seen at first right here, is spelled the same. We're just getting the root word of what the word right here comes from, which is in actuality the same thing, but this part of it is just the root word. This is the root word. This is why it's spelled the same. All right. Then you have the suffix and prefix to bring it all together to give you the definition of what it actually is. All right. And the definition of para, which is the root word of pera or parai, is this. This is where the root word comes from in pera, in locks. To take the lead, to be out of control, disheveled, untidy, unkempt, disorder. This is what locks mean. This is what the root word of where this is coming from. Be unkempt, meaning it's not taken care of. It's disordered, like the Most High said for a Nazarite to be. It's not off by following what the Most High is telling you to do as a Nazarite. To ignore, avoid combing. Let it be in its wild state how the Most High created it to be. I created us to be and for our hair to be. Not saying that you can't comb it. This is only pertaining to if you're taking a Nazarite vow. Now, if you want to grow locks on your own, that's up to you. But we're going to give the proper and the best understanding through the spirit and power of Yahwahshi HaMashiac, so we don't get twisted up on things like this. So we don't just go out and say you got to get rid of your locks when the locks is a symbol, all right, is a sign between a Nazarite and the Most High. So you got to be careful of what you're saying. Have to have more fear of the Most High. To be unkempt, be running wild. This is locks. When you let your hair run wild and you don't take care of it, you're going to have locks. Not braids, not plaits, not cornrows, not singles. Even though you can still have locks doing your hair like that. And tell me if you get singles right now and you don't ever take the singles out or the cornrows out for a year and a half, you're going to have locks. They're going to lock up naturally. That's what our hair does. It's coily. All right. So this is where the root word of parai comes from. This is the root word of it, which ultimately gives you what this means. Long hair of head, locks. From long hair, locks. Disheveled, from para, disheveled. We got what disheveled means. We got what disheveled means, all right? And it's telling you it's all tying into locks. Nappy boy. So is it a heathen custom? Is it a heathen custom for us to have locks? No, it's a Nazarite vow. It's a sign between the Most High and a Nazarite. And we're starting to see that this is talking about locks. It's not talking about braids. We have to go to the law first to find out what this actually means. Then we go to Judges, which is outside of the Tawara. Now, since we got this, since we have the understanding of what locks actually is in the Tawara, in the law, this is what locks are. Now, with that being said, and with that being broken down, we see that in the law, it's talking about actual, I'm going to say it for the sake of this class, dreadlocks, locks. Now, you have a different word, you have a different definition of what locks is when it comes to Judges, or Samson. All right, we know Samson was a Nazarite from birth. While he was in the womb, he was consecrated as a Nazarite. When he comes out, he's a Nazarite from the day of his birth. He's a Nazarite according to Numbers, the 6th chapter, not according to looking at what the definition is in Judges, the 16th chapter. No, you got to go to the law first, because that's where his vow starts, is in the law, which means you get the definition and the proper understanding of the law and what locks mean in the law first before you try to get the definition and understanding of what locks mean in Judges. That's out of order. That's not studying to show yourself approved whatsoever. That's a lack of discipline. All right. So let's go, man. Let's get the proper understanding. So since we know, it clearly shows us that it's talking about so-called dreadlocks in the Nazarite vow in Numbers, the 6th chapter. It's clearly showing us that. Clearly. If you don't get the understanding of that, hey, go ahead and do your own research. This is why I'm doing this class, so we make sure we have the proper understanding between both. Now, there is a different definition of locks, and we're going to go to it. Samson was a Nazarite. Khan, he was a Nazarite. We all know that. The scriptures show us that clearly. All right. Now watch this. Now watch this. I pray that the Most High continues to give me wisdom, understanding, knowledge, discernment, continues to give me the spirit of meekness and faith and endurance in all things, so I can continue to be the best servant I can possibly be for Yahweh Yahwahshi. And if I'm missing something, Akim, share it. Share it. But make sure you do it in decency and in order. Not to try to be right, but for edification so we can get the proper understanding of what the Most High is talking about. This is not a debate between who's right and wrong, because we ain't nothing. We're servants of Yahweh Yahwahshi, and we need to have the true and proper understanding of the scriptures. And how we do that is through discipline, prayer, faith, and study. Khan? All right, let's get into it. Now, before I even go to verse 13, let's get the context of what Judges is talking about at the beginning of Judges, the 16th chapter. This is the book of Judges, chapter 16 and verse 1. Then went Samson to Gaza and saw there an harlot and went in unto her. And it was told that the Gazites, saying, Samson is come hither. And they encompassed him in and laid wait for him all night in the gate of the city, and were quiet all the night, saying, in the morning, when it is day, we shall kill him. So the Gazites was trying to get rid of Samson. All right, let's continue to read. Let's get more context. And Samson lay till midnight, and arose at midnight, and took the doors of the gate of the city and the two posts, and went away with them, bar and all, and put them upon his shoulders, and carried them up to the top of an hill that is before Hebron. And it came to pass afterward that he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. Excuse me. Excuse me. Now, this is the point on down. This is the point from verse 4 on down. Context. And it came to pass afterward that he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. In Hebrew, I think it's Delilah. All right. And the lords of the Philistines came up unto her, Delilah, and said unto her, entice him, and see wherein his great strength lieth. And this is that crafty counsel. And by what means we may prevail against him, that we may bind him to afflict him. And we will give thee every one of us 1,100 pieces of silver. A bribing her. And Delilah said to Samson. So the context is the Philistines want to destroy Samson and try to find out where his power lies. Well, how come he's so strong? We need to find that out. So they use a woman to penetrate that. All right. So the context is to find out what Samson's strength is. Where does he get it from? We know where he gets it from. But let's continue to read. And Delilah said to Samson, tell me, I pray thee, wherein thy great strength lieth, and wherewith thou mightest be bound to afflict thee. So Delilah is trying to find out where does Samson's strength come from? So now she's trying to entice him. She's trying different tactics to find out where his strength is at. All right. This is the context of Judges, the 6th chapter, all the way down to verses 13. And then we're going to get the proper understanding of what locks is when we get there. Verse 6. And Delilah said to Samson, tell me, I pray thee, wherein thy great strength lieth, and wherewith thou mightest be bound to afflict thee. And Samson said unto her, If thou bind me with 7 green withs that were never dried, then shall I be weak and be as another man. All right. So the context is getting into how for Delilah to figure out how Samson can be broken, how he can lose his strength. This is what it's talking about. So Samson is, pushing her off, giving her things that he know ain't gonna work. But this is the context between Samson and Delilah. Delilah's trying to figure out how to get him to lose that strength. And it's always tying to his hair, to his locks. This is the proper context. And Samson said unto her, if they bind me with 7 green withs that were never dried, then shall I be weak and be as another man. Then the lords of the Philistines brought up to her 7 green withs, which had not been dried, and she bound him with them. Now there were men lying in wait, abiding with her in the chamber, and she said unto him, and she said unto him, the Philistines be upon thee, Samson. And he brake the withs as a thread of tow is broken when it toucheth the fire. So his strength was not known. And Delilah said unto Samson, behold, thou hast mocked me and told me lies. Now tell me, I pray thee, wherewith thou mightest be bound. So she's trying to figure out what is his strength so she can get rid of that strength for she can get her money from the Philistines. All right, let's continue to read. And he said unto her, if thou bind me fast with new ropes that never were occupied, then shall I be weak and be as another man. So this binding, she's trying to figure out, I'm going to keep repeating it. She's trying to figure out how to lose. This whole context is talking about how he can lose his strength, how he can be bounded so he can be defeated. Verse 12, Delilah therefore took new ropes and bound him therewith and said unto him, the Philistines be upon thee, Samson, and there were liars in wait abiding in the chamber, and he brake them from off his arms like a thread. All right. Like I said, the context is talking about how to bound him up so he can get caught up, so he can lose his strength and be as other men. So this is the context. So when we get to verse 13, we know what it's talking about. Verse 13, and Delilah said unto Samson, hitherto thou hast mocked me and told me lies. Tell me wherewith thou mightest be bound. And he said unto her, if thou weavest. So we know it's the context of Judges the 16th chapter is talking about how can he lose his strength. Delilah is trying to figure out how to get him weak, how to make him weak through the Philistines, trying to figure out how to make him weak so they can defeat him. This is what it's talking about. So the context of it is trying to figure out how Samson can lose his strength. So when we read verse 13, it's talking about how Samson can lose his strength through his hair. Through the vow as a Nazirite, he has been into, according to Numbers the 6th chapter, with the Most High. And told me lies. So like I'm starting at the top. Judges chapter 16 and verse 13. And Delilah said unto Samson, hitherto thou hast mocked me and told me lies. Tell me wherewith thou mightest be bound. And he said unto her, if thou weavest the 7 locks of my head with the web. All right, let's stop. He said unto her, if thou weavest the 7 locks. Let's take that line real quick. Let's get the definition of weavest. Let's get the definition of weavest. Let's get the definition of weave. We don't need weavest in this part, but let's get the definition of weave. All right. Form, fabric, or a fabric item by interlacing long threads passing in one direction with others at a right angle to them. All right. And it's talking about weaves. It could be talking about braids. Let's see what the similar words is. Entwine. That's braiding, or plaits. Lace, work, twist. In order for you to twist, you those turn into locks. Knit, interlace, which is a form of braiding. Intertwine, which is a form of braiding. Interwork, intertwist, form of braiding. Interknit, twist together, could be either twisting into a lock or braiding or plait. Crisscross, braid, twine, plait. So, in the context of what we're reading, Samson is telling Delilah to, let's read it. And he said unto her, if thou weavest. Samson is telling Delilah, if you braid the 7 locks of my head with a web. It's talking about braiding his locks, not his locks are braids. You get the understanding when you read the context as well. It's talking about how he can lose his strength. All right. And Delilah said unto Samson, hitherto thou hast mocked me and told me lies. Tell me wherewith thou mightest be bound. And he said unto her, if thou weavest, braid or plait or intertwine or entwine the 7 locks. The 7 locks. It's talking about braiding his locks, not his locks are braids. We're going to get into the definition of what locks is in this 13th verse of Judges, the 16th chapter. And we're going to get the proper understanding. If thou weavest or braid the 7 locks of my head with a web. Let's get that in the GNT real quick. Let's get it in the GNT real quick. Salak Laya for this being a long class, but this class needs to be done. And it reads in the GNT, Judges the 16th chapter, verse 13. Delilah said to Samson, you're still making a fool of me and not telling me the truth. Tell me how someone could tie you up. He answered, if you weave my 7 locks of hair. We know weave, another word for weave is plait or braid. If you braid my 7 locks, so if his so-called dreadlocks, what people think are braids, why is she having to braid his braids? They're already braided. Not saying that the braids can't be braided, because I've seen that before. People have singles and then they braid the singles. That can also be done. But in this context, it's not talking about that. It says, if you weave my 7 locks of hair into a loom and make it tight with a peg, I'll be as weak as anybody else. All right. And that wasn't what made him weak. He still broke from that as well as you continue to read. But let's get what locks mean in the proper context. People fumble at this because they go straight to Judges the 16th chapter, verse 13 and be like, see, it's braids. It wasn't locks, it was braids. That's the heathen custom. Cut the locks off. You ain't to follow not the way of the heathen. Ak, you going off. You going off. Well, let's see. Let's see. Let's get what weave means first, because weave came first before the locks. So you got Tha, A, Ra, Ga, Ya. H707. Let's click it. To weave. All right, we mean it to braid, to plait. Origin, a primitive root to plait or weave. You see that? We seen that. What is another word? Just plait. Braid, twine, crisscross, intertwist, interwork, interknit, twist, knit, lace, work, entwine, intertwine, interlace. Now it's talking about braiding. Why is it talking about braiding now? It's because he instructed Delilah to say, if you braid my 7 locks, it's in context, it's talking about braiding his locks, not his locks or braids. Let's continue. So we see. Let me go to. All right. So we see that weave means to weave, a primitive root to plait or weave. All right. And I didn't even take a picture, but salak laya. Let me go to my Strongs right now. I didn't take a picture of the H707 in my hard copy, so let me just go to it real quick. And I'm going to read it out. So this is H707 in the Strong's Concordance, Exhaustive Concordance of the Bible, my hard copy, and I'm reading from this. All right, this is H707. All right, and it means in my hard copy to weave, spin a web. All right, and that's what Samson said to her. If thou weavest the 7 locks of my head with a web, or with a peg, as we see in the GNT, meaning to lock it in. If you weave my 7 locks of hair into a loom and make it tight with a peg, I'll be as weak as anybody else. All right, and we know we'll get what peg is too. So we seeing it's talking about a braid now. So when we get the understanding, it's talking about braiding his locks. So there's a different definition of locks. All right, the locks. It's plural now. Well, it is plural when it was in numbers as well, but you see, it's a whole different word. It's a whole different word than what we see. It's a whole different word, you see. Then para. It's a whole different word. Locks is a whole different word in Judges than it is in Numbers. Whole different word. This is why you have to study so yourself approved, man. So we see it's ma, cha, la, pa, Salakia. Is that ma, pa, la, Salakia. Ma, cha, la, pa. I forgot that one. I think that is a ra, and then tha. All right. So it's H4253. All right. So yeah, it says it will ma, cha, la, pa, ha, ma, chalapa, ma, chalapa. All right. So it says a plait of hair, a braid from kalaf, a ringlet of hair as gliding over each other, which is talking about braid. A lock can also be a braid, but in this context, it's talking about actual braids in Judges the 16th chapter. It's talking about, when it says lock in this context, it's talking about braids. Why? Because in the context, it's talking about Delilah trying to figure out the strength of Samson. And he's talking about braiding his hair, braiding his 7 locks. So it's like seeing this. It's like seeing this, right? It's like seeing Salakia. That's not even it. This. Talking about this. His locks was braided like this. His locks was braided like this. He telling Delilah to do this, not not the braids, the locks being braids. He's telling her to braid his locks. Let's read it again. I'm gonna keep going over this because we got to make sure it's read properly. And he said, this is verse 13 of Judges the 16th chapter. And he said unto her, if thou weavest the 7 locks, that's clearly what it's saying. If you braid the 7 locks of my head with a web. It's telling you plainly right there. So people will go to Judges the 16th chapter and be like, oh, he didn't have locks, he had braids. You're misunderstanding. All right. Because lock in this context means a plait of hair. All right. But in Numbers, where it originally tells you what a lock is talking about actual locks. It's getting you a different meaning of what lock is because he's telling her to braid his lock. So the word entirely changes. Like the Ak who I'm learning Hebrew from is telling you you can be one letter can turn a word into something totally different. And that's exactly what is being done in this right here. People will go straight to Judges, the 16th chapter, without even going to the law first. Samson was a Nazirite, which means you have to get the understanding of what locks mean according to the Nazirite vow in the law. You can't just go based off Judges, the 16th chapter and verse 13, and then don't get any context on it and try to say, follow not the way of the heathen, because it's not talking about dreadlocks. It's talking about braids. Pump your brakes. It's talking about his locks being braided. All right. That's what locks mean in this context. H4253. H4253. Braids of hair. Locks. So this can be called a lock too, when your locks are being braided, or when you just have braids. All right, man. And I'm gonna finish reading Judges 16, and we're gonna go down. So now that we got the proper understanding of what locks means in that context. Matter of fact, let me get the definition of peg. A peg, a short cylindrical piece of wood, metal, or plastic, typically tapered at one end, that is used for holding things together, hanging things on, or marking a position. So Samson told her to weave the 7 locks of my head with a web or with a peg, same thing, or with a peg. He's telling her to braid his hair and lock his braided locks, his locks that are braided, into a peg and lock it in to a web. So she tied him up to something, braiding his hair around whatever it was that was braided to lock, and then locking his hair into whatever she locked his hair into. All right. Let's see what a peg is. Something like that, I guess we could say. All right. And let's see what the definition of web is. A network of fine threads constructed by a spider from fluid secreted by a spinnerets used to catch its prey. All right. So we've seen that this is what it's talking about. Locks in the Judges, the 16th chapter, it's totally different from locks in Numbers, the 5th chapter, or the 6th chapter. Salaklaya. All right. Let's continue to read. Verse 14. And she fastened it with the pin and said unto him, the Philistines be upon thee, Samson. And he awaked out of his sleep and went away with the pin of the beam and with the web. All right. And she said unto him, how canst thou say I love thee when thine heart is not with thee? Thou hast mocked me these 3 times and hast not told me wherein thy great strength lieth. And it came to pass, when she pressed him daily with her words and urged him so that his soul was vexed unto death, that he told her all his heart and said unto her, there hath not come a razor upon mine head, for I have been a Nazarite unto the Most High from my mother's womb. If I be shaven, then my strength will go from me, and I shall become weak and be like any other man. He had locks, so-called dreadlocks. He didn't have braids where it was just singles itself. He instructed her to braid his locks, as the picture that I have shown you was, and I don't even have it pulled up, but you've seen it. His locks were braided, not the braids were his locks. So with that, I hope Yasharahla had the proper understanding. And with that, I want to send out a mighty shalom to all the Akim wa Akwathium wa Zaquanium. And with that, I want to say shalom. And I hope everybody was edified. Shalom.